Today we're going to learn the step-by-step process that is photosynthesis. So here is your equation for photosynthesis. Remember, reactants are what goes in, they're what the plant needs to do photosynthesis, and what comes out are your products. That's what plants make. So plants need carbon dioxide and water and sunlight. They use these things to create glucose and oxygen. So I'm going to walk you through this step by step. You need to make sure that you can walk through step by step. So the best way to do this is to just keep practicing, saying the steps over and over and over again until you can remember it and know what's happening in each step. Photosynthesis has two parts, and the two parts are a cycle. They create things that the other one needs, and they feed each other. The first part is called the light-dependent reaction. It depends on light. That means that it needs light to happen. Without light, it cannot happen. Okay, so these are also called the light reactions. The second part is light independent. That means that it does not require light, and it is also known as the dark reactions. So let's start with step one, the light dependent. Well, first, the plant is going to need two things in this step. It's going to need light, because it's light dependent, and it's also going to need water. So where is the plant going to get water? From the roots. Water travels from the roots up through the stem and into the leaves. Now, the light-dependent portion is going to occur in the thylakoid membrane, so the little skin around the thylakoid. Look at your chloroplast picture here and remind yourself, where is a thylakoid? Hopefully you remembered from yesterday that the thylakoid is each of the little individual circles or sacs inside the chloroplast. So the light dependent is going to happen in the membrane around each of those little sacs. What's going to happen during this step is that the plant is going to take in water, and it's going to use the energy from the light to break water up into its component parts. So it's going to break water into hydrogens and oxygens. So now it's not water anymore. It's been broken. Now it's hydrogens and oxygens. From breaking of water, what we really want is the hydrogen, because the hydrogen has this high energy electron. So when hydrogen is all by itself, it has lots and lots of energy in it that we can use to do all sorts of things. So this is what we want. We want the hydrogen. The oxygen is just a byproduct. It's waste. The plant is going to throw it out at this point as a waste product because it doesn't need the oxygen. It needs the hydrogen. So what we're going to do, we've thrown away the oxygen because we don't need it. We're going to take this hydrogen, this high energy electron, and we need to keep it alone. Hydrogen doesn't like to be alone. It wants to partner up. It wants to find somebody to hang out with. But the plant needs this high energy electron alone. So what it's going to do is it's going to put it into a taxicab called NADP. NADP is just a chemical that acts as a taxi cab, okay? And what it's going to do is it's going to carry this high-speed electron through what's called the electron transport chain, okay? The electron transport chain. And what that's going to do is it's just going to keep that hydrogen moving to where we need it to go. It's going to keep it single and alone and keep it high speed. Now, when NADP picks up its passenger, hydrogen, it becomes known as NADPH, okay? You just add that H on there to let you know it's got its passenger. It's got the hydrogen. Now, since it's high-speed hydrogen is inside of it, it's high speed too. So now NADPH has lots of energy inside of it, and it's really, really fast. So what we're going to do is we're going to carry this high-speed hydrogen through the electron transport chain. And at the very end, we're going to meet up with an enzyme called ATP synthase. We know it's an enzyme because it ends in A's, A-S-E. It's called ATP synthase because it's going to synthesize ATP. And it kind of acts like a revolving door, like you see here. Okay, it's going to spin, and what's going to happen is it's holding on to an ADP, a dead battery, and a phosphate group. Okay, diphosphate, it only has two. It's going to hold on to this other one. Now, when that high-speed taxicab, NADPH, goes through this enzyme at the end, it's going to fly through super fast, and it's going to start spinning really, really fast, and it's going to slam together an ADP and a phosphate, and it's going to turn it into ATP. Now it's a charged battery full of energy, ready to be used. This is what it really looks like. So, light dependent. What did we make? We made ATP, which is high energy. We made a full taxicab, NADPH, which is high energy. And we created some waste, some garbage, oxygen. We threw that out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this ATP and this NADPH and we're going to send it out to part 2. Okay? So here's an image to start getting you in your mindset. Okay? The plant, so this whole thing here is going to represent the chloroplast. Okay? The plant is going to take in light. It's going to bring up water from the roots. Okay? We're in our thylakoid sac right here. And we're going to break hydrogen and oxygen up. We're going to throw the oxygen out. It's garbage. We're going to keep the hydrogen, put it in its taxicab NADPH, send it through the electron transport chain. At the end, it's going to spin through ATP synthase, creating ATP. So we're going to send out ATP and NADPH to part 2. Part 2 is called the light independent, or the dark reactions. It is also called the Calvin cycle. This portion is going to occur in the stroma. So look at your chloroplast picture here and remind yourself, where is the stroma? Hopefully you remembered that it's a thick, sticky fluid that fills it up, so it's represented by the empty space. So in step 2, we need the ATP we created, we need that high-speed taxicab NADPH we created, and we need to bring in one more thing. We need to bring in carbon dioxide, CO2. The plant is going to get that from out in the atmosphere, floating around. So it's going to pull that in through pores in its leaves. And we're going to use these 3 things to create sugar, food for the plant, and food for anything that eats the plant. It's going to do this by breaking carbon dioxide apart. We need the carbon to be able to make the sugar. Okay? And we're going to use the hydrogens that are in the taxicabs, NADPH, and then some of the oxygens we're going to keep, and we're going to create some more oxygen as more waste, more garbage that we're going to throw out. And the sugar that we're going to focus on is glucose. Remember, we know it's a sugar because it ends in ose. And there's our sugar ring. Now, when we use the ATP and we use up the NADPH, we use up all their energy and the energy's gone. But they're not garbage because now we can send them back over to the light dependent and recharge them because they're rechargeable. So ATP becomes a dead battery, ADP, and NADPH loses its passenger and turns back into NADP. Okay, so they're both reusable. We're going to send both of them back over to the thylakoid to be recharged and reused. So our outcome for the light independent are ADP, NADPH, and then of course sugar, our glucose. And then we created some more garbage oxygen that we don't need as a plant. All right, so here's your whole cycle. Make sure you can walk through it, okay? So the plant takes in light and it takes in water. It uses the energy from the light to break the water into hydrogen and oxygen. Throw the oxygen out as garbage. Stick that hydrogen into an empty taxicab, NADP, and it turns into NADPH. Send it through the electron transport chain where it meets up with ATP synthase, which spins really fast, creating ATP. Take the ATP and the NADPH out of the thylakoid, take it into the stroma. Now we're going to go through the Calvin cycle, or the light independent cycle. We use the ATP, we use the NADPH, we pull in carbon dioxide. Break the carbon dioxide, hook it up with the high-speed hydrogens, create glucose, C6H12O6. Create some more oxygen that you throw away, and now we have an empty taxicab and a dead battery, ADP. Send both of those back over to the thylakoid. We start all over again. I know that was a lot, but that slide that all that I just said, you might want to listen to several times. Make sure you can walk through it too. So let's finish up by talking about why this process is so important. Because one single glucose, has 12 high energy hydrogen atoms stored in it. And it originally came from water. Those hydrogens came from water, and we turned it into sugar, C6H12O6. 12 hydrogens that are in a stable form that can be stored that way and then be used when somebody needs it. So whenever you eat sugar or you eat any food that has glucose stored in it, your cells are able to take that glucose, break it down, and turn it into usable energy. So in that way, all of life depends on water, sunlight, and chlorophyll.